Sånn, da, mine damer og herrer, både dere her i salen og dere der som følger oss online, da er vi klare til neste runde, og det skal handle om digitalisering og kanskje også noen digitale utfordringer. Hva kan vi gjøre med det? Det skal handle om nå er altså at Fonn skal få komme, og vi skal hilse på all the way from UK, David Lawrence og Jan Tore Grindheim. Vær så god.
Thank you.
Takk. Hello everyone. My name is Jan Tore.
David Lawrence.
Yeah, we're from Fonn, and today we're going to discuss the challenges of digitizing, that's a hard word, an industry, and focus on the Norwegian market and the global market, but a special focus on the UK. So, my background is oil and gas. I've worked a lot in project management, lean, user interface. And Dave is our VP of construction, who's worked in the construction industry for 20 years, more than 20 years?
20 years, yeah.
And the construction tech for about 8?
8, probably closer to 9 now, maybe.
Yeah. So first of all, we're going to do a bit on our story, why Fonn exists. We're going to talk about the differences and the similarities in the markets, challenges of the differences, and also at the end we're going to have a bonfire session. So if you have any questions, please just text me on the phone number that you see behind me here. Any questions at all, that's appreciated. So, as I said, I used to work in oil and gas for about 14 years. I learned a lot about good projects, zero fault tolerance, lean working methods. But then in 2015-16, I built a summer house on the west coast of Norway. And I got first-hand experience with construction. That was not necessarily a positive one. A lot of silly mistakes that could easily been avoided by just simple measures of project management tool. And I did my research and I found that construction was way behind the other industries in digitization.
Yeah, often beat by agriculture, farming, those kind of industries that are a lot less advanced in terms of machinery and things like that, but not as digital as they could be.
No, even fishing and hunting is now past construction and digitization. Yeah. So I decided I could take this chaos and put everything on one platform to give everyone in the project control. I want to do a bit on Fonn, what Fonn is today. We are about 40 employees. We're growing good. This year, 72% to date. Hope that will be 100% when we end the year. Our product is very well developed. We've developed it for more than 200,000 hours now. And according to our users, 9 out of 10 are really happy. We have 330 customers and 40,000 users that have been a part of 80,000 projects. Fonn, we have had a lot of focus designing Fonn that it's for the builders. So a lot of efforts on the mobile application, the site workers, spend a lot of time interviewing the people on site and understanding their actual needs.
Yeah, I think like 80% of our users are based on the mobile app versus the desktop.
Yeah.
So a lot of our effort and energy goes into making that mobile app very user-friendly, easy for the guys on site to be able to interact with and get the data into the platform, which then benefits the majority of our users that are using the desktop app.
And to kick off the global part of this, we've made a video with our customer in Texas, Benj.
Hello, we are Benj, Texas, General Contracting in Dallas, Texas. We do commercial construction, mostly restaurants is our specialty. We're at a restaurant here that we're doing now. It's a 23,000 square foot restaurant for Komodo. We use Fonn as our software to keep up with all the paperwork of the job, and there's a lot of it. All RFIs and submittals, everything's tracked through Fonn. Everything goes through Fonn.
Fonn is helping us out in the field tremendously. I mean, it's a tool that we're using out there where we can take our phone or our iPad or tablet, whatever. We write up a quick report. We can take pictures all around the job site. We upload that, and our administration people in the office have got it at their fingertips, and we can share it with our clients. Some of our clients love that. So we can take that and choose how much we want to send to our administration people and how much we want to send to our clients. It's just a fantastic tool. It helps us out in the field.
So before Fonn, we did everything by paper. We just printed out the plans, printed out all of our change orders, printed out our RFIs, everything got printed out. Now we don't do that. We put everything on Fonn, and everybody has access to it. Or the people we want to have access to it have access to it.
I use Fonn for a lot of submittals come through. I put documents, install them on the Fonn. It works really well, especially with communication to the ownerships, to the architects, everything like that. Very user friendly. And it's just a great application to utilize, not only between the architect and the ownership level, but in between us as being contractor. We are able to discuss things without actually having meetings. It's right there formatted all up in the app, and it's very well monitored.
If you're in the construction industry, you need all the tools that you can get in that toolbox, and Fonn is just one of those other tools that you can have, and it just helps you to streamline your information cycle. If you're not using Fonn, I would highly recommend it.
I think one of the key takeaways from Benj was the fact that they save like $6,000 a year just in paper. That stat stuck with me for quite a while now. It's quite an alarming one. $6,000 worth of paper. But yeah.
Yeah, and for the Norwegians there, they didn't talk too much about like forms and such. They talked about RFIs and submittals.
RFIs and submittals, something quite big in the UK, which we'll come on to shortly. I'm David Lawrence, the VP of Construction for Fonn. So my background previously was 20 years in the construction industry, around concrete RC frames, groundworks, deep drainage, and civil engineering projects. This was a project that I was involved in. This is a particle accelerator in Didcot, just outside Oxfordshire. This is similar to the Hadron Collider that they built in CERN in Switzerland, mostly underground, I think it was. That was a particular career highlight for me. And I also did this project, which was Selfridge's flagship store in Birmingham. This was a concrete skin building with 17,000 stainless steel discs. This was what built my career ultimately. And then for the last 8 or 9 years, I've been involved in construction tech. I actually co-founded a competitor to Fonn. Ultimately didn't have the right team. Left that business, found this man, and the rest of the team that we have at Fonn. And I've really been able to excel here. I've been with Fonn now just over 3.5 years. And we've taken the UK from 30 clients up to about 150 as of recently. Some UK stats then. So in the UK, house building's going quite strong. So we've got some large numbers of houses being built. I think that's very different to the picture in Norway. Is that fair to say?
It's about 10 times as big, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of the houses were blocked by some EU legislation. Of course, we're no longer in the EU. So we renamed that legislation. I think we just put a new title on it, changed the rules, and now those 100,000 houses are able to be built.
Search replaced EU with UK?
Yeah, exactly. It's just a bit of Tipex and some new words there. But that's been good for the industry. The housing market's really strong in the UK at the moment. So some of the things from the UK market then. So we do have a housing shortage, like most places in the world, and we're looking to address that. Labour shortage is another one. We have a lot of Eastern Europeans coming to the UK construction market, taking up those jobs. The EU's made that a little bit trickier now as well. We're all about sustainable building and modular design. There's a lot of off-site building now. A lot of houses being built in factories, shipped to site in like a flat pack, and then assembled on site. That allows us to get those properties built a lot quicker. Is that something that you guys experience a lot of here?
Yeah, this is trending more and more towards modularized or pre-builts in Norway as well. It's quite similar to that.
So the UK likes to adopt change through regulations. So we're more stick than carrot. The UK industry needs to be beat into doing something by fines, regulations and rules, whereas Norway is a little bit more inclined to want to do that themselves because it's good. So we have these different parts of the UK legislation. As you can see, it's quite vast. This document on its own is about 900 pages long. It's excellent reading if you're on a transatlantic flight sometime. Fonn's been helping the industry predominantly in the Part B and Part L section, and I've got some slides that's going to talk about those. But this gives you an idea of how detailed these regulations are and the hoops that the companies in the UK need to jump through to avoid any consequences. The biggest one for us was the golden thread, and this falls under Part B. We had an incident in the UK where an apartment block caught fire. About 70 people lost their lives. The entire block was destroyed. And when we looked at what went wrong, nobody really knew. There was no audit history. There was no documentation. The wrong material was installed. It was installed incorrectly. It was approved by some people, but we didn't know who or when or why. This led to a UK-wide look into how buildings are built and how that data is stored. That became the golden thread, or it's now called the Building Safety Act, because we're not in the EU. And that changed the way that industry has to operate now. So in the UK, everything has to be digital. You're still allowed to use paperwork, but all of your data needs to be stored digitally. A lot of companies are still learning that today, even though this legislation has been passed for quite a while. We talked about this earlier. I think this is something that you'd like to see in Norway, right?
Yeah, I think that those digital traces, especially with all the changes that happen through a project,
Yeah.
that they are not digitized, so maybe on a piece of paper or maybe even a post-it note, or it was agreed on a phone call or a text message. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this has been a positive change for the industry in the UK for sure. But the industry is always lagging behind adopting these changes. I think as human beings, we're quite averse to change. Construction people, more so. I think they like to do things traditional. We've always done it this way. This is how we like to operate. So getting the industry up to speed on that's a big challenge. Another one was the Part L regulations. This was around conservation of energy, predominantly around the insulation that goes in our cavity walls. What the industry used to do was build a house. It would be the model house. Everything would be perfect. We'd take some really nice photos to evidence that we'd done that insulation. And then all of those photos would be used on every house that we built on that scheme. So it would be the same photo for every house. And it turned out that some houses didn't have the insulation installed correctly. Some didn't even have the insulation installed at all. And then they were failing conservation checks, which led to the Part L regulations. So now, in the UK, when you install insulation in a building, you need to take photos of it. It needs to be geotagged to prove that it was taken on that particular property, and then compiled in a report and independently verified by an assessor. So what Fonn did, we built our app to be able to capture those photos, geostamp them with a long and latitude, link that to a property, and then include that within a report. That report can then be handed to an assessor, or the assessor can have access to the Fonn app, and that's what a lot of our clients are doing now. So the assessor can log into Fonn at any point, see that detailed information, sign that property off a lot quicker than they would have if that was a manual process. And one of our clients that we're doing that with is a company called Blå Homes. They build about 4,500 homes per year. I think they're ranked 7th in the UK in terms of size of house builder. 1.2 billion sterling turnover. They had a very scattered tech stack. I think they had about 11 different tech tools that they were using to track all of these things. Fonn's on a phased approach now to start bringing that in-house into one app through the Fonn system. And we've already deprecated 3 of their systems by using Fonn. And they're using that for the Part L data capture. I think you can see one of the photos there. There's a picture of some insulation on the TV screen. And then this is some of our team on site with Blå Homes doing the on-site training. We like to lead from the front. I think adoption of any platform can be quite tricky in construction. We like to make sure our people are on site with hard hats, PPE, standing in the mud with the builders, making sure they understand how to use it, how to get the best out of the platform. And then we've got another video here, right?
Yeah, so this is now going back to Norway and trying to discuss the differences. So we're going to kick it off with Bergan Bygg, one of our excellent customers from Mestergruppen and Systemhus.
Bergan Bygg ble stiftet i 1995 som et enkeltmannsforetak. Jeg heter Eirik Bergan. Jeg er daglig leder i Bergan Bygg på Osterøy, med en kombibedrift som driver med byggevareutsalg og entreprenør. Vi var tidlig ute med å ta i bruk Fonn. Vi bruker Fonn til å dele informasjon mellom kontor og byggeplass. Vi har alle tegninger, vi har sjekklister, vi har opprettet saker fra byggeplass til kontoret eller motsatte.
Vi bruker Fonn i alle prosjektene våre. Ofte begynner vi egentlig før vi begynner prosjektet med befaring. Da har vi et skjema som vi har laget i Fonn, der vi fyller ut ulike ting, tar bilder og sånn. Når vi har vunnet jobben, så blir alle dokumenter lastet opp der, sjekklister. Så det er liksom hele prosjektet lever i Fonn da. Spesielt saker har vært veldig bra, fordi at du fjerner en del telefoner og spørsmål som kommer til prosjektlederne. Kanskje de er ute på en annen jobb, og så passer det ikke så bra. Og så er det å ha de nyeste tegningene ute, at vi tar mer bilder, vi er bedre på kvalitetssikring fordi det er enklere.
Nei, Bergan Bygg står for kvalitet. Bergan Bygg har mange års erfaring. Det har jo blitt et viktig verktøy for oss, en dokumentasjon av det vi utfører, og bygger jo da kvaliteten i arbeidet vårt. Det gir oss en stor verdi i form av at de som er her og utfører får en ro på hva vi skal gjøre. Og så er det spesielt viktig for, hvis det skulle være noe i etterkant av et prosjekt vi har levert fra oss, så kan vi gå inn og finne disse tingene vi har gjort i ettertid.
Ja, Fonn er viktig, vi bruker det. Jeg er inne på Fonn hver dag, sjekker ting. Og det er jo sånn vi kommuniserer med byggeplassen, det er liksom der ting foregår. Der ligger alle bilder, alle sjekklister, alle dokumenter og dialogen. Så vi er helt avhengig av Fonn i arbeidshverdagen.
More? The outtakes.
Blooper reel. Bergan is a perfect example of someone who wants to become better and has adopted technology to achieve that. One of our absolutely most forward-leaning customers who talk to us every week about improvements, what can be done better, what can change. So really appreciate customers like that. And we had to discuss, of course, the differences between Norway and the construction industry globally. So I'm not going to lecture you on Tech 17 or Byggherreforskriften or anything, but like this is what we have in Norway compared to what David said with all the part A to S. I don't know.
Yeah, it changes daily. But yeah.
And also the size of the industry, with Norway now building about 25,000 houses and apartments yearly, which is good. But compared to the UK with 300,000 dwellings, it's not much.
A little bit bigger, yeah.
The one thing that we found in Norway that we have never seen anywhere else, and not in the US, not in Europe, is our way of using advanced BIM models. You do have BIM in...
Yeah, so we use BIM on a public sector project. So if you're using taxpayer money for like a school or hospital or something like that, you need to be BIM compliant, whatever that means for that particular project. At the lower end, it could just be a common data environment where everybody's working to the same set of information, or it could be we're building a big power plant at the moment, at Hinkley Point, and we're using 3D models quite like this, but that spectrum's quite small. Outside of the public sector, BIM's relatively non-existent. It's mostly a buzzword, and it's a marketing piece rather than a real tool that the majority of construction companies are using.
In Norway, we will BIM model a kitchen.
Yeah, I don't think there's a BIM model of a kitchen in the UK.
No, it's a significant difference when we don't even include BIM in our pitches outside of Norway, as it's a buzzword.
Yeah.
So we'll try to visualize the differences between the industries.
Yeah, Norway, $80 billion worth of project volume a year. Seems relatively large until you compare that to what we do in the UK at 386 billion. But then all of that is dwarfed by what they're doing in America at $1.8 trillion worth of volume. Did we get those to scale in the end? I don't think we did. But that gives you an idea as the differences between the two. In Norway, 250,000 people employed in the construction industry versus 2.2 million in the UK. And I think both countries have about a 10 to 12% ratio of employable workforce working in construction. So it's relatively comparable in that sense.
Yeah, but I like when you show that with a small Norwegian flag and the big other ones, how I feel that we Norwegians, we are a bit like, I saw a presentation the other day where it said from the Norwegian construction industry, look to Norway. I think we feel that we are quite good. But I'm not sure.
I think there's a lot of stuff that you guys do here that's completely alien to what we do in the UK and the US. I've interacted with our US clients quite a bit, and the differences between the UK and the US is mostly down to terminology, because we all know that Americans like to come up with words for things that are completely unnecessary. But the industry operates in the same way. That dynamic between different parties on the construction site in the US and the UK, pretty similar.
We see the same, like even in Southeast Asia, the Philippines, they do the same as in the UK, South Africa.
South Africa, particularly. Anywhere where British expats are, it's almost identical to what the UK is doing. I think for us, it's the way that you guys collaborate and communicate much better than we do. In the UK, it's often where the main contractor and the subcontractor are on different teams. They're pulling on a rope in different directions. One's trying to beat the other's margin down, whereas the subcontractor's trying to keep their margin up and not get bullied by the main contractor. You hear about a lot of that in the UK and the US, whereas it doesn't seem to be the case here, at least from my perspective. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Perfect. So 58,000 construction companies in Norway versus 353,000 in the UK. A little bit disparity there, and I think that was because you said a lot of this will be down to smaller construction companies, carpenters, trades, things like that, right?
Yeah, small, but very small, like 1-2-man shows. And also one construction company could have like 15 companies to hide their numbers, or I don't know, protect themselves.
They do a lot of that in the UK as well. I think that's for tax accounting reasons, I'm going to say. So they could be efficient with their numbers. And then we've got a bit of a matrix now to compare Norway to the UK and the US. So this is our take on where we think things are going. So we think that Norway's stronger on collaboration versus the UK and the US.
And we see that clearly with running data from the Fonn system. The average number of people in a project in Norway is maybe like 10 to 15. In the UK, it might be just 4. So the desire and the willingness to share information and collaborate in Norway is so much higher than in the UK and the US. That's at least our experience.
Yeah, we have a permission built into Fonn for the client, and where we have lots of clients on the Norwegian end of the platform, they're almost non-existent in the UK. They're scared about sharing information with their client.
I think the only one is the builders that are using Fonn that build the fancy footballers' mansions and then
we did.
higher
I
end.
think it was like Marcus Rashford's house, and he wanted access.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I did like that. He wanted access to the platform to be able to look at what's happening on that particular project, and that's a case of where the client wants to indulge that particular client.
Surprised you knew that name. You don't follow football.
Handegg. Yeah. Okay, next one there was like document drawing handling, the ISO standard 19650. It seems that all the territories seem to be adopting this quite well. This is something that I'm really passionate about, because I think in the UK at least, architects, engineers, design teams, they're creating their own naming conventions, their own terminology, their own formatting, and it just leads to confusion within the industry. I think our industry is also plagued by acronyms, where we shorten everything down and we assume that everybody knows what we're talking about. And people don't like to ask or seem like they don't know. and then that just leads to more confusion. This next one's really interesting for me as well. So we've got a tool on Fonn called Submittals and RFIs. These are heavily used in the UK and the US, and almost non-existent in Norway. And I think I need to explain what they are, right?
Yeah, you should.
So a submittal is when we want a drawing to be approved for use. So we might send that to the client, we might send that from the architect to the design team so that they can sign off on it and verify that it's safe to be used. We like to track that, we like to have a date and timestamp on it, we like to have a real audit history so we know why that drawing exists, why we're able to build to it. I spoke to a client just today on our stand who said they do that via a phone call or an email. And in the UK, that would keep me awake at night. I've had phone calls with architects and they've said, yeah, that's fine, no problem. 2 weeks later, when something's gone drastically wrong, you recall that conversation to the architect, guess what? It didn't happen. And now we're in a situation where we've done something wrong or we've got to fix something and we have no audit trail, no history, no way of mitigating that risk. And I think that all comes back to like the golden thread stuff that we were talking about earlier, where we want to track all these changes and make sure everybody's on the same page. So that's what submittals are. RFIs are clarifications related to a document. So if I want to clarify...
Now you're using acronyms. What is RFI?
Yeah, okay. RFI, request for information. So it's a question and answer, ultimately. I want to know what width the doorway is because let's say it was missing off the drawing. And I want the design team to be able to clarify what that door width is. So I will formally ask that question, get the answer back, date and time stamped again, so we can refer back to it later. All for the same reasons, because if we put that door in and it turns out the door is incorrect, I want to be able to refer back to why that door was done that way. But I guess this comes back down to, again, how the UK works versus Norway. In the UK, if the door was wrong, somebody's ready to have a fight with somebody about, you said this, you said that, and now we've got a cost and you've got to pay it. Whereas it doesn't seem to happen here like that.
It does.
Yeah, probably you are, yeah.
It's, but I would say one of the biggest surprises with the RFIs for me, because I understand RFI coming from oil, we used similar tools there, but how I expected the architects and everyone to be on the platform to solve the RFIs and approve the submittals in the platform, but that doesn't happen.
No, that's an interesting one. I've got my background, obviously being an engineer, I've got a love-hate relationship with architects. I understand that they're essential to getting buildings built, but they're not engineers, right? Plus, architects like to go for their 2-hour lunches, have their lobster, and then finally get back to your email 6 days later. So we've built into Fonn for our requests for information that they can just reply to the email rather than log into the platform, and our system will still track that audit trail for that particular RFI. In my career, I'd probably be creating 40 RFIs a week on a standard project, sometimes into the hundreds, and across a project, thousands of RFIs are generated. So to hear that they don't exist in Norway blew my mind a little bit, I'll be honest. Advanced 3D BIM.
Yeah, so we've discussed it already, but I always like to say, well, we've been doing BIM quite advanced for like 10, 15 years, but have we become more productive? Our prices going down, our quality going up? And I think that the answer to that is no, we're not building better. So maybe why BIM?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that you've taken BIM a lot further than we have. And has that been worth it? Has there been a benefit for that? Are you seeing the fruits of that labour? Is my question to you.
Yeah, and when you have a project and you have 200 BIM coordinators, quite a cost involved in that.
Does anybody know what a BIM coordinator does?
Only them.
Yeah, because we're not sure in the UK.
No, I think BIM is the future, but I think that we need to do it in a much steadier pace and be sure that we involve everyone in the project to work on the same set of data, not have like an exclusive BIM elite.
Yeah, it's very much that. And again, that alienates people from wanting to get involved in that. And I think that's what's holding it back ultimately. Next, compliance and regulations. We're aware that they exist in Norway, but I think they're more important in the UK because of the carrot and stick scenario that I talked about. The UK audience at least needs these rules beat into them to make sure that they follow those rules, whereas the Norwegians seem to be more inclined to just want to do it because it's good.
Yeah, so the regulations in Norway is much more around how you build and not how you document it.
Yeah.
You've taken it a few steps further, which I think should maybe be looked at by the Norwegian industry.
I think so. And then finally, field adoption. I think we've seen that from the stats that we have, that the field adoption in Norway is a lot greater it is in our other industries. I think that's because generally the workforce here wants to adopt technology, wants to become more efficient, wants to get better at what they're doing. In the UK and the USA, it's a little bit more, it's a steep learning curve for a lot of people within the industry. We often find there's certain features within Fonn that are adopted more easily, things like timesheets, to make sure they're going to get paid. We seem to have a 100% adoption rate on that one first time round, and that makes getting other features within the Fonn platform adopted relatively easy. Okay, next slides. So yeah, I think the takeaways here are the UK has been required to digitise rather than wants to digitise. And Norway has more of a desire to digitise and collaborate within every party on the project. And that's a relatively new concept to me. In the UK also, 100% digital docs, so everything has to be digitised, like I mentioned earlier. The fact that Benj is saving $6,000 a year on paper alone is a good reason to digitise, even though it's the law. And then in Norway, we have high digital adoption and high collaboration, things that I think the UK and the US should aspire to do as well. Excellent. And now we'll answer some questions.
Let's see if I have anything.
Very brave sharing your mobile number.
Yeah. It's correct. What do you see as the major differences between the UK and Norway in regulations?
Say that again?
So what are the major differences in the regulations between Norway and the UK?
In the UK, if you don't follow the regulations, there are penalties. Companies can cease to exist. The company that was involved in that fire that I talked about doesn't exist anymore. A lot of the directors are in prison, actually. So the consequences are severe. I'm not aware of anything similar here, right?
I think maybe we briefly discussed it with maybe in Norway the regulations are more around how you build and not so much on how you document it.
Yeah, in the UK it's more like they're the police rather than they're there to help you or guide you. A lot of the government documentation requires a lot of interpretation and support from consultants to be able to understand what's required and how you achieve those regulations.
What if you don't look at regulations only? What if you say just what are the biggest differences between Norway and UK? Like, not about regulations, what would you say are the biggest differences there?
I'd say, so the question there for the people that can't hear was what's the main differences between the UK and Norway? For me, it's the collaboration and the communication that you guys do that the UK doesn't. That's just not how we work in the UK. I wish we did, because jobs would get done quicker, jobs would finish on time, jobs would finish on budget, you would demonstrate a good relationship to your client. A lot of our projects will go over budget because there's been a struggle within the teams working on that project, whether that be subcontractor or main contractor. I worked for a company that had a litigation team. They had people ready to be able to fight their subcontractors to be able to create more margin. They'd price jobs on a loss, knowing that they were going to take that angle. And unfortunately, it's quite widespread in the UK, and it's almost unheard of here, right? Yeah.
I think also talking to construction companies in the UK is like, yeah, we need something. We need some way to track our RFIs. So it's not a question if they need something. We often get it in Norway, but we don't need it. We have emails, we have SharePoint. We don't need anything more. But in the UK, we absolutely need it.
Yeah, because of the amount of litigation that you can have internally. You need that evidence, you need that data. If you don't have it, it's going to cost you in the long run.
Yeah. A question on how many users we have in US, UK, and Norway. We haven't actually measured that, but much more in Norway. As I said, it's half of every project in Norway has at least double the members in the US and the UK. With some, of course, when we built that crazy casino hotel in Reno, Nevada.
We did a hotel in Reno.
Yeah, 1,000 users, I think.
1,000 users on the project.
Everyone on the even when they were carrying out drywall and insulation, they needed app. So that was a weird one.
They wanted to upload a 100 gigabyte drawing.
Yeah.
In America, they do their drawings completely differently. They come in a single PDF of 500 pages. And every time they do a revision, they revise the whole document, which is crazy.
And a question on how we prioritize Fonn UK versus Norway. And I guess that's on development.
It's
I think you're better at
sure, yeah.
It's always a fight.
Yeah, so we do 2 weekly updates to our platform, and we do quarterly planning, and we all descend on our development centre, and I represent the UK. We have somebody there representing Norway, rest of the world, and then we decide what's going to tick the most boxes for each territory. Sometimes it's fully aligned, and all the territories want the same thing, and that's the jackpot. That's absolutely getting done. And then the rest of the time, we're often client-led in terms of, what does the client need, what does the client want from the platform, and how do we deliver that? And we go through a consultative process with those clients, like we did with Bloor Homes and their Part L requirements. That was really well planned, really well thought out, to make sure we could deliver on that.
We have something called a product delivery group, which consists of sales, marketing, product development, and then we score the individual all the requests, and we see whether we get our best ROI based on the development, and also how big we are in Norway compared to the UK. I think 50% of our revenue is in Norway, but more and more is coming from the UK. So we're growing fast in the UK now.
Yeah, I think we have bigger clients in the UK generally, other than a few outliers. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think the need there is greater in terms of needing a solution like we talked about.
Willingness to pay for a system is much bigger in the UK and Norway.
Yes, in the UK we got a couple of early adopters, tech companies that were there at the start of the digital shift, and they haven't developed their product in about 10 years. It's the feature's done. They're selling that for large amounts of money, and the situation's right for somebody like Fonn, who's quite a disruptive startup tech company that can come in there, offer a better solution. Our mobile functionality is our single biggest USP, the way we can get anybody on site to be able to interact with that platform at a price that's a fraction of what they're paying the software that was designed in the 90s.
A very good question here on how to bring Norwegian tech into the UK. What's the obstacles? And for me, first of all, finding good people. Finding good people abroad is super hard. US, almost impossible. They are very good at selling themselves in interviews. So finding Dave and have him calling me and say, you know what, I've quit my other job. Can I work with you guys? That was...
It was a bold strategy for sure. Yeah, I think...
And it was the first months of COVID, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. We were going to meet up and then we didn't meet up.
No.
Fun times. For me, it's all about understanding the audience and what they need. I think the market these days is dominated by American solutions, where the terminology is all wrong, and that's really important to the UK audience. Remember, they're already making a big change, going from potentially no system to a system, or from a system that they've already used and are comfortable with to a system that they don't know anything about just yet. So having these little changes can make a big difference to them. They use the wrong words, they use the wrong terminology, they have different workflows. So being able to adapt our product to that market to make sure that it hits really hard in terms of what they need and how that's going to work, that's key for us. And I think we've seen that in the success that we've had there.
I like that going joke in the UK when we speak to them, like, oh, you call it snags. I love it. Not punch list. And ball in court.
Ball in court.
Yeah, ball in court.
Rather than just the user that's responsible for something.
Yeah.
But yeah, we probably shouldn't keep bashing the US terminology, I guess. It's funny though, right?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
There's one more here, and that is regarding the golden thread, about how the industry responded to it. And this was before my time in the UK, and also if the golden thread is going to spread. That was...
Okay, yeah, sure. So the event that happened in the UK where the apartment block burst into flames was national news. It was predominantly around the cladding on the building, and a lot of cladding companies' ears were wide open. They were very aware of what was going on with this particular project. But I think it impacted construction companies in general, whether they were involved in cladding panels or not. To see an entire building be destroyed by fire because of a construction issue is a message to anybody involved in construction. To see those companies become bankrupt and CEOs go into prison, that's a strong message, whether you're in cladding or not, or even any other industry, really. The fact that there was no audit trail, there was no data, there was no reports, no logs, and there should be, because it's not that difficult. All of that could have been avoided. I think the industry's responded generally well. It was definitely a very public event that people took notice of, and the consequences of it are very well felt in terms of avoiding that in the future. I think we've got a long way to go. As we've seen, we've got an industry that's very averse to tech, but we're getting there, I think.
But I think one of the most commonly used systems in the UK construction industry is still WhatsApp, isn't it?
WhatsApp, Dropbox, email, telephone, they've all got their place, but the extent that they use now is probably too much.
Yeah.
I did a project where we used Dropbox for documentation and drawings, and a design team changed a drawing mid-project without telling anybody on Dropbox, because you can delete what you want on Dropbox, not on Fonn, by the way. And that project changed, something was in the wrong place, and there was consequences to that. So those tools, they're not designed for construction, it's not best practice. The same company that I spoke to today on the stand, they're using email and Dropbox. And I said, how's that going for you? He said, you know how that's going for me. But I had to ask the question anyway.
Yeah. I think that's it. No more questions. That means that we have done a good job informing people.
Yeah, unless anybody's got a question here.
We'll be available after. And I think that we hold the people long enough, 45 minutes.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, thank you all for coming and listening to us. And just reach out if you want to discuss or learn more about UK. Talk to this guy.
Yeah. I'm here till about 12 tomorrow.
Okay, thank you all.
Cheers.